All right, straight to it today. Let's get going on these articles. There's about three of them. They might be long, they might be short. Again, welcome to Leftist Read-Along, where I read and make an analysis on the current event articles from a leftist perspective using the liberationnews.org articles. Generally, these will be the articles. And this is kind of like a personal video journal, which I'm sharing along with everybody live streaming. Feel free to comment if you have questions on my analysis on the article itself. Feel free to use it for your entertainment or your own knowledge. All right. Descriptions are in the description box if anybody needs links or more information. All right. First article for today. Illinois House moves to reverse Chicago's decision to keep cops out of public schools. This was written by Aviva Veline, educator in Chicago Public Schools, and Catherine Hadenchek, local school council members, March 17th, so a few days ago. Let's get to it. On February 22nd, the Chicago Board of Education voted to end Chicago Public Schools' contract with the police department. The board's resolution calls for both the removal of all school-based police officers, known as school resource officers, as well as the creation of a new district-wide policy around school safety. Within a matter of weeks, a bill was filed in the Illinois state legislature aiming to reverse the board's decision. A bipartisan effort backed primarily by the Democratic Party, including Illinois Housekeeper Chris Welsh, HB 5008, seeks to amend the Illinois School Code to make the hiring of or firing of school resource officers the responsibility of local school councils. In effect, politicians from both major parties are uniting to prevent police from being kicked out of public schools. The city of Chicago has a complex, shifting arrangement of forces governing the operation of the public school system. Standing at the center of this current conflict is the role of the local school councils on the one hand and the Board of Education on the other. Local school councils serve as a governing body of the school. They were formed in 1988 as part of the reform effort to make school governance more democratic. OSCs are composed of representatives from the school community, including the principal, educators, parents, community members, and students. The responsibilities of each OSC are to review and approve the school budget, create the school's continuous improvement work plan, and select and evaluate the principal. The Board of Education, as it is currently constituted, is a body appointed by the mayor. However, due to years of organizing and activism, the board will be transitioning into a fully elected representative body in the coming years. As the current board was appointed by Brandon Johnson, a former Chicago Teachers Union organizer, it represents a largely progressive trend of the movement for educational justice and equity in Chicago. This is a sharp break from the previous boards under mayors like Rahm Emanuel and Lori Lightfoot, who repeatedly took positions antithetical to a thriving public education system. The board's decision to take police out of schools did not fall from the sky. The demand for quote, cops out of CPS, end quote, has been raised for years and picked up steam particularly in 2020 during the revolt against racism, which swept the country after the police killings of Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and Breonna Taylor. Spearheaded by current and former CPS students, protests were organized regularly to pressure both LSCs and former Mayor Lightfoot's Board of Education to remove police officers from public schools. Ultimately, the balance sheet was mixed. Several important victories were won on the LSC level, which kicked cops out of individual high schools, while the board ultimately rejected the movement's demands. The decision by the current board to remove SROs and replace them with a holistic school safety policy, which should be seen as a hard-earned, if delayed, victory of movement organizing in 2020, Black and brown student organizers took to the streets and sowed the seeds of a police-free future for public education. This courageous work continues to bear fruit. It is in the context that the Illinois Democratic Party's attempts to rewrite policy to keep police in schools must be viewed. The claims that the bill will strengthen democracy ring hollow. How can it be democratic if it is, in essence, a nullification of a popular movement demand? How can it be democratic when most of the bills with sponsors do not even represent constituencies in Chicago? Under the guise of democracy, Democratic Party leaders are seeking to limit the decision-making authority of the Board of Education as it transitions into a fully elected body. Crucially, research has clearly demonstrated that police presence does not keep students safer, or restorative justice practices have shown significant benefits. Completing this research, we must note that 47% of CPS students are Latino, 35% are Black, and only 11% are white. In sum, more than 80% of the student body is Black or brown. The communities most severely harmed by policing. Clearly, it is absurd on its face to enshrine as a right the ability for LSCs to make demonstrably unsound and dangerous decisions regarding school safety. It is also important to note that SROs are compensated with funding from the district. This is why LSCs have in recent years been able to remove SROs stationed at their schools. With Chicago Public Schools predicting a budget shortfall of nearly $400 million for the upcoming school year, there are several questions which should be posted to all representatives sponsoring this bill. Why not instead advocate for greater state-level funding for Chicago Public Schools? Why fight to keep police officers in schools while starving the budget of the fourth largest school district in the United States? We must also look inward as public school parents, educators, and community members. The trajectory for school safety is stark and unequivocal. Either our money goes towards evidence-based restorative practices which promote student safety and enrich the learning experience, or it goes towards further entrapping Black, brown, and poor youth in a criminal legal system. Progressives and public school advocates must reject this attempt by politicians from both mainstream parties to wrest this movement's victory from us. If the anti-democratic maneuvers of this bipartisan attack are successful, the LSCs must become critical arenas of the struggle against the school-to-prison pipeline. The future of public education must be one free from the repressive force of police and prisons. The feature photo was of Illinois State Capitol, photo credit to Daniel X. O'Neill. Yeah, I mean, the article in a quick summary explains that restorative justice and support groups in the schools are way more effective and healthier for the students than actual police that just use pretty much a hammer for everything, right? Police are trained to be aggressive. They're not trained to de-escalate. The system's corrupt. It is unionized in a corrupt way, where police are funded to be for-profit corporations, really. Independent of what the people in the state or in their communities want. So in my personal view, I'm a strong supporter of abolition of the police force and building a safer, more humane system of protection within neighborhoods, which don't require guns and don't require half of each state's budget in the billions to arming people to brutalize what could be reformable people, especially kids. So, yeah, why spend billions on police that, because of their weapons, because of their inventory of gear, they profit elitist when we could be sending all those billions of dollars towards therapists, more teachers, more equipment, better schools. I have a huge disagreement and gripe with the fact that schools are budgeted by their cities, and not all schools are equal in the United States. If you live in the Beverly Hills areas, you're going to have the nicest, most up-to-date schools in the country. If you live somewhere like in a deteriorating neighborhood, anywhere in the United States, it's going to be a huge difference. You're going to have deteriorating schools, mold in the paint, probably no AC, probably the lackluster computer systems, terrible transportation, understaffing, right? Things that as one of the most modern, sophisticated, resourceful nations in the world in history, it shouldn't be an issue. It shouldn't be an issue to fully fund schools, especially for children from kindergarten to 12th grade. The schools should be fully funded. They should all be equally treated. with the same budget and the same resources. They should be fully overstaffed if necessary. Yeah, of course, overstaff them. Lunches should be free to all people in classes. They shouldn't have to worry about that, and they should be healthy lunches. They should all have counseling, and they should all have an actual curriculum that teaches them actual, real American history, and not the propaganda that we get nowadays. Yeah. On top of that, yeah, we should also get a preschool and daycare for free. That's what I think. And this is that part comes more from a proletariat feministist idea, where yeah, if you want to give people equal opportunity, then all these things need to be done. I don't see why we're wasting money uh, giving billionaires subsidies so they can send more spaceships to space for philanthropist billionaires to just take trips to the moon or whatever. Um, I think we live in a wasteful system that is not using the resources adequately to redistribute the wealth to the people that need it, and it just creates a different kind of caste system around the world and in America. So yeah, no more police, better funding of the schools, better funding of the neighborhoods, redistribution of wealth. That's my thoughts on it. There's obviously a lot more we can talk about. We can talk about charter schools, private schools. Um, we could talk about how Republicans rather do away with all public schools and give people funding to choose their charter school or credits to choose their charter school of choice. This is all nonsense capitalist ideologies that will definitely just create a wider wealth gap between the have and the have-nots, the working class tiers and classes. So no, I don't support any of that. I support equal and full funding for all schools from pre-care all the way to 12th grade at least. And even beyond that, I support full colleges to be free because I think smarter people are better neighbors, or more informed, more fully rounded, educated people are better neighbors and contribute more to humanity in the overall. Okay. All right. So we're going to move on from this article. Great article, in my opinion. It was short, too. It was short, or I'm getting a lot faster at reading. I don't know. Right, let's see here. Let me check on the screen to make sure everything is still working. Cool. All right, we're going to move on to 3 Lies About Cuba Debunked. I like Cuba. I like the history of Cuba. I like what they've been able to accomplish and how, and their working class struggle is very interesting to me. Plan a visit sometime soon. All right, let's see here. This article, 3 Lies About Cuba Debunked. Liberation Staff, March 18th, 2024. And you can download the PDF flyer if you want about. Okay. Here we go. It's a photo of children in Havana, Cuba. The credits is from Flickr, Ian Southwell. Just a basic picture of their neighborhood. All right, pretty short article. All across the corporate media today, there are stories attacking Cuba and its revolution. After protests took place in the city of Santiago over blackouts and food shortages. Excuse me. I thought the tea would help me, but it actually messed me up. All right. All across the corporate media today, there are stories attacking Cuba and its revolution. After protests took place in the city of Santiago over blackouts and food shortages, the Biden administration is hoping to provoke a crisis inside of the country. But the hardships in Cuba are the making of the U.S. government itself. This is a tried and true tactic of the empire. In the run-up to the infamous 1973 CIA coup in Chile that overthrew elected President Salvador Allende, the Nixon administration's strategy was to, quote, make the economy scream, end quote, to erode support for the government. But Cuba doesn't need to go back to the days of being a colony of Washington and Wall Street. What Cuba needs is for Biden to end the blockade. Lie number 1, electricity and food shortages are the result of failure by the government. The truth, for over 60 years, the US government has attempted to strangle the Cuban economy by cutting it off from the rest of the world. Not only are no US companies or individuals permitted to trade with Cuba, the blockade means that almost any entity from any country in the world is barred from doing business in the United States if they trade with Cuba. The blockade causes Cuba 15 million worth of losses every day. Because Cuba is prevented from importing enough fuel, plants that generate electricity frequently have to shut down. Plus, since Cuba is prohibited from purchasing spare parts, when equipment at these plants break, it can be next to impossible to fix. The same goes for modern agriculture machinery. A storm like Hurricane Ian intensifying because of climate change, often cause major damage to crops, which cannot be replaced with imports due to the blockade. Lie number 2, the Cuban government violently represses its people. The truth, Beatrice Johnson Urrutia, the leader of the Communist Party in the province of Santiago, personally went to the demonstration to hear the grievances of the protesters. Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel reacted to the protest by saying, quote, amid a blockade that aims to suffocate us, we will continue to address the demands of our people, listen, dialogue, and explain the numerous efforts being made to improve the situation. Leaders of the government have cautioned against letting outside powers take advantage of the situation to provoke violence. Compare that to the actions of the US government. When millions protested against racism in 2020, did Trump go to the marches to hear people's concerns? No, he ordered police and soldiers to crush the demonstrations. This is the difference between a capitalist government that serves the elite and a socialist government that serves the people. Lie number 3, Biden cares about, quote, democracy, end quote, and, quote, human rights, end quote, for the Cuban people. The truth, Biden could end the blockade and let the Cuban people live, but he wants the hardships to continue so the US government can overthrow the revolution. Even short of that, Biden could immediately remove Cuba from the absurd state sponsors of terror list and reverse the 243 additional sanctions imposed by Trump. He does not care one bit about the Cuban people and the right to live in dignity. The Cuban people elect their leaders and participate in decision-making. Democracy has nothing to do with it. What matters is whether or not a government is loyal to Washington. Saudi Arabia is a dictatorship ruled by a king, but Biden is good friends with the regime. What motivates Biden in a desire to force Cuba to return to being a de facto colony ruled by U.S. corporations, but the people can stop him? Let me read that one more time. What motivates Biden is a desire to force Cuba to return to being a de facto colony ruled by U.S. corporations, but the people can stop him. All right, yeah. So just like that last example right there, and that's important. That's an important one. The Cuban people elect their leaders and participate in decision making. Democracy has nothing to do with it. What matters is whether or not a government is loyal to Washington. Saudi Arabia is a dictatorship ruled by a king, but Biden is good friends with that regime. What motivates Biden is a desire for Cuba to return to being a de facto colony ruled by U.S. corporations, but the people can stop him. So pretty much what the Western Empire does is, like, if you don't play by the rules of capitalism, which is enslave your people through commodities, you get pretty much shunned and blacklisted from the world economy, right? So because Cuba has shown to be resilient to a capitalist system and actually cares about its people, the people suffer not because of Cuban actions, but because of exterior actions of higher powers that don't let them exchange and work out their own economy. This is unfortunate. This is exactly what they're doing in Venezuela as well. This is what they do all over the world, right? So if it's a free market, like they say, if it's democracy, like they say here in America, then maybe they should stop putting blockades, embargoes, sanctions, and stop with the interventions, right? But no, the Biden administration, like any administration before him, don't care about humanity. They don't even care about the lives of real American citizens. They'd rather sacrifice thousands of lives for the good of capitalism, right? So they'd rather a bunch of people die and starve in the streets in America die of lack of health care, die of starvation, die of lack of shelter, and be undereducated and lower their life expectancy here as long as elitists here in America make a profit. And that's the truth. And it's just a huge hypocrisy of what people talk about the free market and capitalism working. It's all nonsense. Okay. So pretty light article today. Let's go on to the next one. And this one, not sure how heavy this one is, but it's currently on what's going on in Israel and Palestine. So let me check the signal real quick for a second. All right, everything looks good. Israeli real estate events selling stolen Palestinian land met with protests and disruption by Lyndon Nicholas on March 21st, 2024. The photo is in Long Island, New York protest, the great Israeli real estate event, credit liberation photo. This is wild. This is going to be a wild report. I'm going to take my sweet time reading this since it's the last one for tonight and try to be very thorough about what's going on here. As its genocide of the Palestinian people rages on in Gaza, Israel has continued its policy of settler colonial expansion in the West Bank through the illegal confiscation, sale, and occupation of Palestinian land. In fact, an Israeli real estate entity has been making a push to sell illegally confiscated Palestinian land to Americans and Canadians in an effort to expand its settlement in the occupied territories. A real estate tour dubbed, quote, the Great Israeli Real Estate Event, end quote, planned several such events across Canada and the Northeast United States and controversially promoted the sale of Palestinian land in the illegally occupied West Bank. The tour began on March 2nd and included in-person sale events planned throughout Montreal, Toronto, Teaneck, New Jersey, Cedarhurst, New York, and Brooklyn, New York. The website for the event series advertised lectures and discussions topics such as apartment and building availability, legal advice, financial advice, and other pertinent information for those wishing to participate in the illegal sale of Palestinian land. The website's list of sponsors include, quote, international marketing and promotion, end quote, quote, Emmanuel Group, end quote, quote, Your Home in Israel, end quote, and, quote, Jewish Press, end quote, among others. In a February 22 interview on Arutz Shiva, Israel National News, Gidon Katz, an initiator and producer of the Great Israeli Real Estate Event, revealed that organizers had originally planned the sales events for mid-October of 2023 before being pushed back. He noted in the interview that now is a, quote, a good opportunity to buy from a practical point of view, end quote, and urged viewers to, quote, take the opportunity, end quote, before prices go up. He also emphasized the presence and importance of, quote, Anglo communities, end quote, across the region. This is a textbook definition of settler colonialism, stealing land from the indigenous population and selling it off to others abroad to settle there. It also emphasizes the use of racism as a tool of empire, with reference to the safety of, quote, Anglo communities, end quote, implying that other communities, namely ones made up of indigenous Palestinians, are dangerous or undesirable. Zionist land sales violate international law. These land sales are an insidious arm of Israel's occupation and violate a number of laws and international conventions. At the domestic level, they violate the Fair Housing Act of 1968, which prohibits housing discrimination based on national origin, religion, ethnicity, gender, and other protected categories of identity. These sales events were not widely available to the general public and were only circulated in spaces and to people in support of the Zionist settler project. Palestinians, the rightful owners of the land that these real estate tours are selling, have no voice in the process and are even barred from purchasing their own land back. The sales event and Israel's ongoing theft of Palestinian land also flout international costs to dismantle settlements dating as far back as 1980, when UN Security Resolution 465 called on Israel, quote, to dismantle the existing settlements and, in particular, to seize on an urgent basis, the establishment, construction, and planning of settlements in the Arab territories occupied since 1967, including Jerusalem, end quote. Additionally, international humanitarian law dictates that Palestinians living in the occupied territories are protected under the Fourth Geneva Convention. Article 49 of the Fourth Geneva Convention states, quote, the occupying power shall not deport or transfer parts of its own civilian population into the territory it occupies, end quote. It also prohibits the, quote, individual or mass forcible transfer as well as deportation of protected persons from occupied territory, end quote. The International Committee of the Red Cross and the Conference of High Contracting Parties to the Fourth Geneva Convention have reaffirmed the settlement as a violation of IHL on multiple occasions, most recently by Security Council Resolution 2334, passed in December of 2016. In fact, the entire existence of settlers in the occupied territories is a violation of IHL. According to Article 8, parentheses 2 of the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, quote, the transfer, directly or indirectly by the occupying power of parts of its own civilian population into the territory it occupies, or the deportation or transfer of all or parts of the population of the occupied territory within or outside this territory, end quote, constitutes a war crime. Quote, when committed as part of a plan or policy or as part of a large-scale commission of such crimes, end quote. In addition to this, under the Hague Regulations of 1907, quote, the public property of the occupied population, in parentheses, such as lands, forests, and agricultural estates, end parentheses, is subject to the laws of usufruct. I think I said that right, usufruct, end quote. The Hague Relations also prohibit the confiscation of private property. According to the International Committee of the Red Cross, this means that Israel, quote, has a duty to ensure the protection, security, and welfare of the people living under occupation and to guarantee that they can live as normal a life as possible in accordance with their own laws, culture, and traditions, end quote. Zionist real estate events not welcome in the U.S. cities. It is evident that public consciousness is shifting more and more in favor of the Palestinian people, with many connecting the history of settler colonialism in Palestine to similar histories of that theft of indigenous lands throughout the United States and Canada. Since October 7th, a formidable mass movement has grown in defense of Palestine against Israel's occupation and apartheid policies, and this movement has not allowed these Zionist real estate events to take hold in their cities. When the Great Israeli Real Estate Event passed through Teaneck, New Jersey on March 10th, it was met with a protest of hundreds of pro-Palestinian activists. Similarly, Long Island activists organized their own demonstration when the Zionist Convention passed through Cedarhurst, New York on March 12th. These events have also been met with protests in Canada. And in Brooklyn, New York, the in-person real estate event planned for March 13 was canceled after pressure and backlash from pro-Palestine organizers. When protesters learned that the event would be pivoting to Zoom that night, they flooded and continually disrupted the online webinar, forcing the event planners to end the virtual meeting. The protests and disruptions of these Zionist real estate tours, along with the large-scale mass mobilization we've seen since October 7th, indicate that people will be waiting and ready to disrupt, shut down, and rally for the liberation of Palestinian land and the Palestinian people. So they're not even waiting to fully genocide Palestinian people. They're already selling their land. This is horrific. What Zionists are doing is clearly a fascist genocide of the Palestinian people. And it's horrific. It's horrific that so many Americans are in support of Israel in this form, as if supporting Israel means supporting Judaism. It doesn't mean supporting any religion, doesn't mean any of that. Israel is just a capitalist state, and it's just doing the same thing that other capitalist states have done around the world. They're doing the whole manifest destiny dance. They're doing the whole colonial process dance. Uh, they're practically conquistadors. Uh, so they're driving indigenous people out of their lands because they feel that they're superior beings. If that doesn't sound like Hitler-ish uh, type of language to you, I don't know what it is, right? So this might get my video blocked for all I know, but that's exactly what's happening. My video is ad-free, by the way. These streams, always welcome to talk to people if they want to chat, ask questions, or give more insight. Um, but yeah, because it's ad free, because it's just a video journal of my thoughts and my ideas, they're probably not going to promote this. They're definitely not going to promote this because it's very leftist content. As a leftist stoic, I have a lot of reasons through my learned life experiences to believe that what's happening in Palestine is horrible, that you don't starve, you don't bomb women and children indiscriminately to take their land, just like you don't do it here in America. I feel like people like Afro Americans or Negroes or Native Americans all around the world deserve reparations, and they deserve their basic human needs met. Everybody on this planet deserves their basic human needs met, and capitalism is not going to provide that. The greed, the example of the greed of capitalism as being seen right now in the genocidal acts in Gaza are a great example of how capitalism just feeds greed and really just rewards the worst existing people on earth. Uh, and that is not going to provide equity, and it's not going to provide better standard of living that provides peace on earth or any kind of peace whatsoever. So yeah, so that's my take on it. I'm glad there's protesters. I wish I got more emails in regards to these protests. Unfortunately, I live in a pretty quiet zone. We're a small town where we don't do much protesting. There's not a big flank here of leftists. I'm working on that to keep educating people, mobilizing slowly but surely. We'll see what happens throughout this year. But that's the feed for today. If anybody has any questions, feel free to send them in the comments if you ever have inquiries or want to get involved uh, or share some ideas, thoughts, analysis. That's it for today. Everybody have an excellent day. Keep reading Liberation News or any far leftist article that will give you facts, knowledge, resources, and keep you informed, and spread the articles, spread the information if possible. All right, everybody have an excellent day, have an excellent evening, have a great week. And trust me, you don't hate your work, you hate capitalism. Have a good day. Bye-bye. Yeah.